You will own nothing and you will be happy.
This is the future according to the World Economic Forum. And whether you know it or not, gaming has been taking steps in that direction for a long time. In just a decade, video games have shifted from being things you own to software you rent. A world where thousands of dollars spent can be deleted in a second. Why does the future look so bleak, yet also look so great?
This is genuinely how many games you get on Game Pass.
In a moment, I'll tell you how Nintendo started their own gaming subscription service and why you won't own games anymore. But first, we need to talk about our video sponsor. Sponsors are important for our channel because 50% of all of our revenue goes directly into the Going Indie Fund. We hope that with this fund, we can help indie developers get the finances they need to finish their games. So that being said, I need to talk about this video sponsor, UpperGX. I have been using UpperGX for a while now, and it's been especially great for when I'm traveling. I travel a lot for work, and I like having my gaming laptop so I can play when I'm not home. But the laptop struggles to run anything while I play. Want to keep those Chrome tabs open while you game? Nope. They take way too much CPU or RAM. I've got to close every tab before I launch Steam. But that's not the case with UpperGX. I can keep a bunch of tabs open and it doesn't impact my performance at all. Not to mention it has a panel that lets me limit the amount of CPU or RAM. Even having 20 tabs open isn't a problem. What's even better is that UpperGX has an import tool, which allowed me to import all my settings from Chrome. This was huge since I have multiple emails and all sorts of bookmarks. Not to mention I can customize everything with mods from the GX store. Want to listen to the Hollow Knight soundtrack while you browse? You've got background music and beautiful wallpaper. Want tabs and keyboards to make sounds? You got it. Mods are great and they're super easy to disable and enable in the menu. So if you have a potato computer like me and you need the perfect gaming browser, check out my link below and download UpperGX today. Thanks to UpperGX for sponsoring this video. While live service model is the trendy new buzzword in gaming, companies have been trying to make this work since the very beginning. Back in the 80s, some of the oldest gaming companies released their very own subscription gaming services. Just like today, these subscriptions gave you access to a bunch of titles without ever having to actually buy them. You just had to pay a monthly fee. But Mattel and Atari weren't the only ones to try the subscription model. In the 90s, Nintendo and Sega also took a crack at it. Sega called theirs the Sega Channel, and it used a cable television adapter to let you play a bunch of games, rotating the selection every month. Nintendo called theirs Satellaview, which used satellite signals through a special tuner you attached to the SNES. It offered games, magazines, and other media you could all download onto your console. These services were ahead of their time. While they only lasted a couple years before ending, the gaming companies knew that once the technology got better, this would be the future. People and technology just weren't ready for game subscription services. But then, some third-party companies gave it a try. In the 2000s, we got the first real taste of subscription gaming with Blockbuster and Gamefly. Blockbuster had copies you could pick up in the store, and Gamefly would mail them straight to your door. And who could forget those commercials?
We paid $69 back.
That's a lot of baloney.
So as we can see, the subscription model has been around in the gaming industry for a long time, but it's taken 40 years to finally take off. And now, it's really taking over. Game Pass, Ubisoft Plus, EA Play, PlayStation Now, Apple Arcade. These services are everywhere. Nearly every company has their own version or variation. The technology to make the gaming subscription model work is finally here, and people are worried. Right now, the future of gaming looks murky to a lot of people. But before gaming tried the subscription model, other forms of media were knee-deep, and we can look to them to foresee the future. When the television came out, all you needed was an antenna to watch shows, with each channel being broadcasted over radio waves directly to your family room. In the beginning, people only got 3 channels. Once you had the TV, you could watch anything your antenna picked up. You really had to fiddle with it, but it was a one-time payment. Everything changed though in 1972, when HBO created the first cable television service, Pay TV. Other companies saw what was happening and wanted a piece of the pie, creating copycat services left and right. By the end of the 80s, 53 million houses now had cable television. The cable subscription model was becoming the new norm. And now, 50 years later, we look at the cable television as legacy media, something outdated that only old people use. From cable TV to streaming services to YouTube, there are more platforms to watch movies and shows than ever thought possible. I mean, you can still buy that antenna and watch a few channels for no additional cost, but it's not enough. Who's doing that? We want Netflix, Prime, ESPN, Mr. Beast, and more. We don't just want 3 options or even 3,000 options. Somehow now, we want millions. It's easier than ever to come home after work or school, sit down on the couch, and binge some episodes of your favorite TV show. You don't even need to DVR the show or wait till Saturday morning.
You're watching Boomerang on Cartoon Network.
Millions of movies, TV shows, and videos are at your fingertips. It's mind-blowing. I can't imagine what someone from the 40s would think if they saw all this. It really is incredible, and it's all thanks to the subscription model. It's made media accessible. But there's a problem in all this. While the subscription service has been prevalent in entertainment for a long time, and it's brought media to the masses, we can see how companies have pushed the boundaries, seeking new ways to nickel and dime its users. HBO in the 90s, for example, started adding other channels to their platform. Optional add-ons not included in the base price. Not terrible, but it gets worse. A more recent example is Amazon, who announced that they will be adding commercials to Amazon Prime, which originally was a perk included in the $140 annual Prime fee. So a perk that was included is now an additional cost. Where it gets really devious is when we look outside entertainment. Companies like Mercedes-Benz recently started locking certain car features behind subscription fees, like faster acceleration. And in 2022, they made over $1 billion off these subscription-based features. That's just a cherry on top of all the other money they make selling cars. So you not only have to pay for the Mercedes, but you have to pay to use the car in a certain way, which is absolutely insane. And because of how successful Mercedes has been, most automakers are now planning on implementing similar subscriptions. So obviously, subscription services aren't going away anytime soon, and it's becoming so prominent that it's infiltrating every industry. But what does this mean for the gaming industry? Well, let's look at the negatives first. Back in the day, when we were blown into game cartridges and listening to Robin Williams tell us to
Seize the day.
you owned every game you bought. You had a physical copy, and you could do whatever you wanted with it. Share it with a friend, destroy it, great. It was yours to do as you please.
Seize the day.
But with players transitioning to digital games and subscription models, this is changing rapidly. Most of the games you own aren't actually yours. It says it right at the beginning of the Steam subscriber agreement. The content and services are licensed, not sold. The agreement everyone signs but no one ever reads tells you that you own nothing on Steam. You're just buying the right to use what you purchase. And it gets better. Later on in the subscriber agreement, it says Valve may restrict or terminate your account for any conduct or activity that breaches the Steam online conduct rules. A lot of people, myself included, have hundreds or even thousands of dollars worth of games on their account. And at a push of a button, you could lose all of them. At least physical games are still safe, right? You just buy the disc. Not exactly. If you buy a physical copy of the game today, you better hope the game has an offline mode. Because if the game is online only, owning that physical disc is nothing more than a cool decoration to sit on your shelf. The developers can still revoke your access at any time if they decide you violated their terms of use. Now, Valve isn't going around restricting and terminating accounts left and right. It's not like they're attacking their players. They want people to trust and enjoy Steam. However, some other companies are more than happy to abuse powerless customers. In mid-2023, Ubisoft was found deleting accounts due to inactivity.
So we have temporarily suspended your inactive Ubisoft account, and you have 30 days to reactivate it.
Additionally, the popular game engine Unity recently announced some massive changes to their monetization model, surprising everyone with just a blog and a social media post. Unity was screwing with people's livelihoods, and they promised they wouldn't. You see, when Unity was released in 2005, it was a one-time purchase. You bought the software and you owned it. But then they shifted to a subscription model, a yearly payment plan that followed in the footsteps of Adobe and other software companies. And when Unity made this change, they said that there would never be any royalties with Unity. You would just pay your yearly subscriptions and you could use Unity. No strings attached. We're not nickel and diming people, and we're not charging them a royalty. When we say it's free, it's free. When we say it's $75 a month, it's $75 a month. But then in September of 2023, Unity announced this, going back on their promise. On top of the subscription model, which already charged up to $2,000 a year, Unity added download fees. Every time someone downloaded a game that used Unity, the developers would be charged up to 20 cents. The number of times I have deleted and reinstalled games is a lot. I'm constantly uninstalling games so I could play something else. Can you imagine being a game developer and selling your game for $5 and losing 20 cents every time some moron like me reinstalls your game? It's ludicrous. While these changes wouldn't take effect unless your game hits a certain threshold, Unity had no way to differentiate pirated copies, reinstalls, or first installs. And so as a developer, you have two options. You can either start over development on a new engine, which is incredibly difficult and costly, or deal with the changes and hope you can still make money, also costly. But some of these devs have been working on their game for 3 years. Starting over would be devastating. Some developers I talked with thought about just throwing everything away, while others who had already published their games were considering removing them off Steam since the download fee at release was retroactive. Unity's terms of service also used to say that you wouldn't have to use the new terms if your game wasn't using the newer versions of Unity. If the updated terms adversely impact your rights, you may elect to continue to use any current year version of the Unity software. But that was a clause that used to exist. Unity quietly changed that in April, removing this section so they could pull off this new monetization method. You can see why there was so much backlash. Unity has walked back or toned down some of these changes, but the download monetization is ultimately still there. And this highlights the bigger problem. When you're locked into a system and they suddenly change the model on you, there's nothing you can do. Just like television, movies, or even cars, we are moving away from owning video games. And it always starts out positive. HBO, Mercedes, Unity, all of these platforms or products have brought their customers enormous amounts of value, with each of these companies being pioneers in their industries. But with time, they have stopped focusing on what value they can deliver you and are now focused on what value they can extract from you. The pattern seems to be create a great product or service, make it available for the masses, get millions of adopters, and once people are hooked on the product, then you add new monetization methods. And right now, the video game industry is here in the framework, amassing millions of individuals on subscription platforms. But what happens when Game Pass becomes like Amazon Prime? When the market matures and a few select services have majority market share, they'll do the same thing every other industry has done. Find new ways to get you to pay, and it all sounds terrible. But there is a positive to all this. You see, right now, we're at the end of this framework for purchase games. We buy games for $60 a pop, and then we have to pay an additional $10, $50, $100 to experience the whole game. These microtransactions are the bane of gamers right now, and it's why so many people are angry and upset with current market practices. This is the pendulum of business. Starts good, we adopt, companies abuse us, we tolerate it for a bit, and then boom. People revolt, they get angry, companies pull back on the monetization abuse, and the pendulum starts swinging back. Usually because new companies come in to compete and fill the value gap. And with the games as a service fatigue and introduction of all these low-cost game subscription platforms, we are about to see a huge positive shift in the gaming market. Just like the shift from paying $1 a song on iTunes to paying $10 a month for millions of songs on Spotify, the access price per game is drastically decreasing. As a personal subscriber of Game Pass, I didn't have to pay $70 to play Starfield when it came out. I didn't even download it. I just streamed the game to see if I would like it. I also didn't have to buy Fable or Tunic or Halo Wars or A Short Hike. I got to try each of these games on my PC and even my phone. I just bought this guy for 20 something bucks and I've been playing Fable on my phone for days. Very nostalgic. But we don't even need a console anymore to play on a TV. This is the future of gaming. Yes, it can be scary, but like every new shift in the market, it brings something good and bad. And I believe the good outweighs the bad. Even if we had the option to go back to a time where we purchased CDs and records and games and movies, the majority of people don't want to, because it's so much easier and cheaper having a subscription. I personally don't want to go back to when I had to buy every song on iTunes or buy movies at the store for 15 bucks. I like my Netflix subscription. I like my Spotify. And I've been liking Game Pass. This platform gave me access to games I normally wouldn't try or pick up. This is incredible. It makes video games more accessible than ever. And on top of making games cheaper and more available, subscription services are better for indie developers. During a recent court case involving Microsoft and the FTC, a group of indie devs actually argued that subscription services like Game Pass are crucial to the success of indie games. They increase the odds that players will discover indie games and lower the cost for players to try them when they do, since players would otherwise have to buy indie games outright. An unknown studio will have a really hard time convincing people to buy their game. But if they get their title on a subscription service, players will see their game sitting right next to the big boys. These platforms drastically lower the barrier to entry for indie developers, and they can level the playing field. So the writing's on the wall. Companies, indie developers, and most people prefer subscriptions. This is the future. Just like how we don't own songs, movies, or antennas. pretty soon we won't own games anymore. We'll be paying monthly to access thousands of titles. Some companies will push the model too far, forcing people to revolt. Some will add weird restrictions or limit the games you play. Who knows? There are negatives and positives to this model, but I can confidently say that a huge industry shift is coming. The way players are accessing games is becoming more and more digital, and new leaked hardware reflects that. We will no longer fight over which console has the best games, but which subscription service. You want to play the new Grand Theft Auto? You have to subscribe to Rockstar Plus. Want to play the new NBA 2K game? Sorry, better subscribe to 2K Premium. The era of physical games and dedicated video game consoles are coming to an end. And if you want to understand how the subscription model is not only killing physical games, but is killing the console, subscribe and stay tuned for the next video. Hey everyone, this week's indie game highlight is Isle Goblin, where you defend your goblin homeland in this awesome top-down RPG adventure. The game is still being developed by Watt, but you can wishlist his game or check out his incredible devlogs here on YouTube. Check out Isle Goblin and let Watt know what you think.